pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Ms. Salchow?
Here.
Mr. Lindemann?
Here.
Dr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Ramos?
Here.
Mr. Breen?
Here. See if I can find the agenda. Summary of current events. Ms. Samaniego.
Yes. Good morning, board members. This is obviously week two or three of starting school. Can't keep track anymore. We are obviously dealing with, some COVID issues. Last week we sent a notification out to our parents that as of that notification, we had no cases that we were made aware of at any sites by any parent or student. That has changed since that letter went out, and so active cases right now, we have 4 student active cases at DUSD and 2 active staff cases at DUSD. That is as of this morning. So we are working with the health department, the staff who are the point of contacts, working with the health department, working with parents, informing them of what is the protocol for isolation and quarantine periods. We've been notifying the parents that are affected by in that classroom. And so we want to just inform our families that if there is a case at a site in a classroom, those are the only parents that will be notified. We don't want to alarm anybody. Some parents want to know who it is and what class and what day. And we have to protect the rights of the family and the student as well. So we will notify only on a need basis. And always the course of action will be guided by the health department and working with Mrs. Cox on that. Something else that I wanted to inform you, as you know, there has been quite a bit of districts implementing a mask mandate in the last few weeks, despite the law. And so in what course of action we were going to take, we have mask as optional, and my recommendation was going to be to wait to see what this, whether districts are violating the law or not. And there was a court ruling yesterday that cited on the side of the district saying that the law really doesn't take in effect until September 29th, and that they were not in violation of that law. I've been getting quite a bit of push from some parents asking us to implement the mask mandate like other districts to protect their children, especially where we're seeing the cases right now are in the elementary. So I think it's something that we definitely need to discuss and make a decision on, at least through September 29th.
It's her superintendent's report. Mm-hmm. We can comment about it, but we can't have a full-blown conversation regarding anything she talked about. I just want to make clear for the purposes of future deliberation. Mm-hmm. You said you think we should do something about it. I don't want to just bypass that comment. What do you mean by that?
Well, I would like to be able to bring it back to the board for discussion. To implement a mask mandate at least through September 29th.
Isn't that on the agenda?
No, it's not, Doctor. So this is part of my report,
it's just part
because
of the
we were
report.
waiting. I didn't know where this was going to lead to, and I was not going to go against any law mandate unless we had at least some knowledge of a court ruling that would allow us to still be within the parameters of the law through September 29th.
Yeah, but on item J, it says discussion action on approval of 2021-2022 DUSD 27 safety requirements for COVID-19. I think that falls under that item.
It does fall under it, unless it's changed by the board. She's recommending now that the board consider more than that, and she's recommending, I think, that she wants the board to address it. I think that was the word she used, to implement a mask mandate. So that would supersede that, because if we took action to have the mandate, then it would supersede that. So let's do it this way, because we don't want to get into any gray area. Quick comments, as we always do customarily, to her report. Do we have any comments regarding her report? Doctor?
Jenna, do you have anything?
Do you have any?
I really don't.
Mr. Lindeman?
I was going to let Mr. Ramos, I'll go ahead. I think we need a special meeting to address that, and so I'd like to see that on the agenda.
You know,
Well, we're not, excuse me, we're not voting here. You're suggesting that we have a special meeting to address it, and I see that I'm getting acknowledgement there. Now, on the special meeting, we generally don't have a provision for future agenda items. However, if the superintendent calls a meeting to address the mandate, then we are going to be confronted with that issue. So if she calls a meeting, and I think, did you say a special meeting?
Yeah, I'd rather do it sooner than later. I mean, this is only, the law allows us to do something from now until September 29th. We don't know what's going to go past September 29th. So
Okay.
it would be a short-term implementation.
Dr. Gomez? Just a comment.
yeah, I'm trying to figure how to say my comments. Okay. If we meet to discuss that, I think we need to know the science behind the face masks, okay? Because I don't know what it does. Now, they say that it does wonders, but yet in the same token, for elementary children and high school students, and the efficacy of a mask that's been worn all day, I think we need to know those things, the science behind that.
Okay, any other comments to the report?
I just wanted to add, Superintendent Samaniego could have for us a report of what has come out from the Cochise Health Department and the State Health Department in regards of all the impact that is going on right now with the start of the COVID picking up, and especially on the children. And we should know, because there is comments that's positive and negative about smaller children wearing masks. But that was only.
Let's not get into
that
to the whole
and
discussion.
We just wanted that to be added on. For
Okay,
tomorrow.
so from what I'm hearing from the board, you're saying that you want a special meeting, and those were only comments. There was no consensus taken or anything. They were just general comments. Then if you call a special board meeting, and what was your idea of when you wanted to have it? You said sooner than later.
Sooner than later, if possible, by tomorrow, because we're already mid-August, and this is only allowing us for at least the first, the next month or so, month and a half. I will, if I can have something tomorrow, then and provide you with as much information like Dr. Ed
Right.
recommended, and then we can make. you
Okay,
can
so
make a
so
decision.
then I'm going to leave it up to you
Okay.
and your staff to determine the time, and the time should be a time available for the general public. When we have these meetings in the morning, they're generally routine matters, and not necessarily that much of interest to the public, because these are administrative types of details. So make sure that the time is appropriate for public input regarding that. So we will be addressing that if you decide that you want to call that meeting.
Okay.
All right, we're off of that. We have, anybody wants to make any public comments?
No, sir.
So we're down to action item 2, A, discussion, information on the elementary and secondary emergency relief ESSER III grant. Ms. Samaniego.
Yes, and I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Trevino. The purpose of us bringing this to you is just for information purposes. I want you to know what we've done up until this point. The ESSER III is the last grant out of the ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funds that we can apply for. It is the biggest grant. There's some steps and things that we need to do, which is part of why we're bringing the safe and healthy requirements information sort of handbook or guidelines. And Mrs. Geraldine is just going to give you a breakdown without going too much into detail that's going to confuse you and bore you. Right?
Yes, good morning, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Samaniego.
So yes, we are in the process of applying for ESSER III. It's a big chunk of money. We're almost there. It's due by, the targeted due date is August 23rd. But in order to fulfill all of the requirements, I just kind of want to give you a little bit of a background of where we're at. So there was an interim final rule released back in April that addressed the new LEA ESSER III requirements. And so I know we have a PowerPoint.
There it is.
Okay. So I just want to make a clarification. So we have different timelines. So yes, the Emergency Relief Fund runs through school year 22-23. However, I just want to make sure that I clarify that ESSER III, let's assume that we do not completely expend all of the funds. We have until 2024 to fully expend all funds. So just wanted to make that clarification. And if you could go on to the next. Here's just a quick, this was from ESSER II, some of the expenditures. But if you could go on to the next. Okay. So one of the requirements is that we have to make sure that 20% of our funding is allocated to address learning loss. And it has to be evidence-based interventions, addressing student academic and social emotional needs, and making sure that we address all subgroups, which would include, for instance, special needs students, migrant students, second language learners, etc. And then if you could go, okay, and then we have the 20% set aside, how would they want us to break it down? And we want to make sure that we offer opportunities for students during summer learning, summer enrichment, extended day, which would be something similar to after-school tutoring, and then a comprehensive after-school program, which we are writing into the grant to mirror something close to what 21st Century would look like. That way, schools that were not awarded the 21st Century grant would have a program similar to that. Going back to then, the other 80% has their allowable and allocable funds can be used like they've been used in the past under ESSER I and ESSER II, making sure that we have a plan to safely reopen schools and facilities and maintaining the health and welfare of all students and educators and staff. And then on another slide, it kind of gives you a breakdown of how that 80% could be spent. Again, technology, PPE, all sorts of similar allowable, allocable costs. We did have to have a meaningful consultation with stakeholders, which we already implemented. That meeting took place last Tuesday, August 10th at Douglas High School Library. Principals were responsible for submitting their stakeholders list to us, and they all also received a survey that they had to complete so that we could obtain feedback and input from these stakeholders. And we also have to finalize the LEA plan. So there's two plans. We have to submit the plan for the safe return to in-person school and the continuity of services plan, in addition to how the LEA will spend all of the allocated money under ESSER III. So those are the requirements. We also have to meet a minimum, at least every 6 months, to revise and update plans to ensure that we're following all of the CDC guidelines and making those adjustments as we go. And that is pretty much it. Any questions?
Members of the board, any questions?
Mrs. Trevino, how much is ESSER III?
Okay. Let me get to that page, just a second. 17,822,940,000. No, 17,822,940 and 14 cents.
And then, of course, were you done?
No.
And of course, the ultimate oversight of all those monies, of course, you're the grant writer. Well, we're going to get to that in a minute. Go through Mr. Soto's office, of course, so he oversees all of those expenditures, correct? And then, are there any questions from the board? Do you want to introduce your new grant writer?
Yes, Mrs. Christina Gomez.
Very
Hi,
good.
Christina.
Welcome. I'm glad to have her. Yeah, that lady has a lot of background and good experience in writing grants, and welcome to the district, and we know that she's going to be a great benefit. Good. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, moving right along, we have an executive session that's a very important one coming up, and we have a specific time with the attorney, correct?
Yes.
We don't want to rush through this, but we want to expedite it as much as possible. 2B, discussion action on the approval of certified hire. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, a couple teachers and the rest are substitute teachers.
Entertain a motion.
I move to approve the certified hires.
Is there a second?
I second.
By Ms. Salchow. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes. Item C, discussion action on the approval of volunteers. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, and I have reviewed two of those individuals, and there is a staff conflict of interest policy that allows me to make the final determination and recommendation. These are just volunteers. They're not paid coaches by any means, and it is my recommendation for you to approve them.
Okay, members of the board, now, and this isn't going to contravene anything she says, but just for clarification, the fact that they're volunteers doesn't make the conflict go away. They're still working in the same environment, they're working together, and for all those reasons. So, do we have a motion yet
No, sir.
I move to approve the volunteers
for discussion?
for discussion.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Dr. Gomez. Discussion.
Ms. Samaniego, if there is a policy on conflict of interest, and we really don't want to bend policies all the time, I don't understand why they're brought forward to us. If there's a policy, then you just say no. So,
Well, I'll let you respond to that if you want to, and then I happen to have a copy of the policy, so I'll let you go ahead and respond to that administratively.
Yes. So the policy was set forth for this reason, and we discussed this, I can't remember what year it was.
Last year.
But may have been last year and probably year before. As you know, we have a very limited interest in volunteers. And sometimes these volunteers, in the case of, let me just say folklorico, this family member does a lot of volunteering, does a lot of good work and help for the folklorico program. And this policy, which states staff conflict of interest, it says the superintendent will make the final determination and recommendation on any volunteer conflict of interest situation where a potential or actual conflict may exist as described. So this is something that was implemented, and I can't remember, Mr. Vereen, if it didn't really exist in that language prior to that. And so it would allow me to look at a case-by-case situation and make that determination. If I felt there was, for example, any more severe, or I felt it wasn't in the best interest of the program, then I would definitely not bring that for approval.
Okay, just for effectiveness in looking at the policy and for factual information, the policy is very specific, and it didn't cover originally volunteers. It said any district employee. It cites the statute, the conflict of interest statute. There was a situation year before last where Ms. Samaniego wanted to pursue this, and I have to tell you, there's a general interest in this everywhere you go, because those laws wouldn't be as stringent and written if they weren't for a specific purpose. The board allowed Ms. Samaniego in 2019 by a regulation to be, in a regulation, an administrative regulation is something that focuses specifically on a part of a policy. It expands it for clarification. And in the policy, we allowed her, when she presented this regulation, to, on a year-to-year basis, determine whether the need for the volunteer was ongoing, and taking into consideration all the things that occurred within that time span from year to year, because they're not grandfathered in. That's why they're here today, because they're approved on a yearly basis. So the point being that she's supposed to make a evaluation and determine for the following year whether it's appropriate and if it's beneficial to the district to continue with the situation. We have two here today, and she's correct when she says that she's the one that makes the determination. Of course, the board can overrule that. And so because of questions by board members regarding conflict of interest, not only current ones, but past ones and possibly future ones, it's up for discussion now. So I'll leave it at that, and then members of the board, any discussion?
I just want to quickly, if
Go
that's
ahead.
all right. This can be akin to a sole source supplier. If you're saying that these two people are like the only people that would like to volunteer and have experience, is that true?
No, I'm not saying that these are the only people. I'm just saying that these are the individuals that submitted an application through HR to volunteer. And maybe there's others, they just don't apply. So I'm looking at the benefit of the program versus, the conflict. And if there was a severe conflict where I knew it would, bring us problems, then of course I wouldn't bring it to the board. But I feel there's not enough for me to deny anybody to volunteer under that circumstance.
So, but I want to be clear, though. You evaluate every situation individually.
Yes.
It's not a blanket statement by
yes.
you saying that the volunteers are always going
Yes.
to be recommended by you.
Exactly.
I want to make sure that's clear, because that's what the reg says. The policy itself forbids it. It says there will be no supervision by any immediate family member. It's very specific. This allows her to do it. I know I'm being redundant, but I just want to make sure everything's clear as we go along. Ms. Salchow.
Anna, do we have any other volunteers that we previously approved in the past couple of months that are spouses or
No.
con?
I'd have to go back and check, but I don't have previous agendas with me. But I am, I wasn't aware that the last one was the parent of the teacher. But when I looked at the application prior to the meeting, I know what kind of volunteer work she does and how much she helps out that program. So I think it's beneficial.
Thank you.
Dr. Gomez.
Okay, just a couple of comments, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. On the second bullet point, where it has the title of swim assistant coach, that seems to me to indicate an employee, okay? And in other words, then if she's an assistant swimming coach, then it should be evaluated by the coach, correct? Now, if we were to change that and just say volunteer
For
for the
swimming.
swimming program, that might be okay. Now, the other one, the third one, I kind of tend to agree with Superintendent Samaniego in that they're kind of like a pair, like, what was the teacher to the other one, and now the daughter became the teacher. So,
And you're correct on that second bullet point, and I failed to mention that because it's not an assistant coach, because that makes it sound like it's a paid position. It's a volunteer for a swimming program. So I would make that change
That's my
if the board
comments.
accepts it.
Mr. Ramos.
Well, the point that we're trying to avoid here is bending the rules, bending the situation. But in some cases, it's, especially like the folklorico, it's difficult to find a volunteer in that program.
that knows.
And difficult to find in any program, really, volunteers. So we have to take a good close look and see whether we allow the superintendent to go ahead and go on with this, or do we want to stick to our policy?
The point made by Dr. Gomez regarding the evaluation, regardless of what the title is, there's got to be an evaluation so that the person can be recommended the following year. And one of the criteria that she should consider in considering them is how do you evaluate that person? That's the reason for the law. It's very difficult for a family member to evaluate a family member. It's very difficult for a family member to be objective in dealing with discipline problems. Or it's very difficult to make other distinctions regarding whatever the daily routine happens to be regarding the family member. That's why you have the conflict of interest law. So she has done that, obviously, because she wouldn't be making a recommendation. She's assessed the evaluation by whoever the head person is that is working with that volunteer. So obviously the evaluation's good, and all of the other details that accompany it. So she's making a recommendation. The board has already expressed their concern, and there is an ongoing concern about conflict of interest. We should be very sensitive to that, always, because it is a major concern, or they wouldn't have the law. So it's not only a policy, it's a law. So do we have any more comments by the board regarding that?
I just
Mr.
wanted to
Lynn?
say one more thing, that I'm assuming that you'll provide the oversight necessary to, for these volunteers, just like all the other
Yes.
employees. Okay, thank you.
You know, and you're mentioning that if there's ever a problem with a parent with one of the volunteers, then who is going to be the arbitrator, or who is going to make the distinction regarding what the outcome is going to be? We've had situations before in athletics where there's been a problem, and parents have been upset that there was a conflict, and to be honest with you, the appearance of impropriety in that situation is not good. It is not good regardless of how you cut it. So after all that discussion, do we have any more discussion by the board? Ms. Samaniego, you want to react to any of the discussion before I call for the question?
No.
Roll call.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes,
Mr. Burry?
Yes. Item D, discussion action on the approval of classified hires. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, and our their first two bullet points are the food service employees that we had to let go of due to reduction in force, and we're bringing them back. So we're very happy that they're wanting to come back. And everybody else is instructional and subs.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need to remove, the last bullet point, she declined the substitute. She doesn't want to be a sub anymore, so.
And that's Bernadette
Bernadette
Lopez,
Lopez.
for
Remove her.
specificity.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to
without that name.
approve the classified hires excluding the last bullet point.
Is there a second?
second,
By Mr. Ramos. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
yes,
Mr. Burry?
Yes. Item E, discussion action on the approval of athletic resignation. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, resigning effective immediately as an assistant basketball coach.
Let me ask a quick question regarding that. Those addendums are,
What did-
well, that's not, is he a teacher?
Alexio Esquer, no.
They're notified year to year whether they're rehired or not, right?
The varsity coach makes that recommendation, whether that is going to continue in his assistant. But he's resigning.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
basically for administrative
Yeah.
purposes to be able to fill the position. So
Mhm,
entertain a
yes.
motion to approve.
I move to approve the athletic resignation.
Second,
I second.
by Ms. Salchow. Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
yes,
Mr. Burry?
Yes, item F, discussion action on the approval of classified resignations. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented. And everybody on there's support staff.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the
By Mr.
classified
By Mr.
resignation.
Lindemann. Second,
second,
by Dr. Gomez. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes,
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes, item G, discussion action on the approval of the following job descriptions. Ms. Samaniego.
Okay, I am removing the second one, interventionist for reading and math support, as there's more work to be done before I bring it back to the board. So a van driver is a job description for a new position we want to have you approve, so that's why we have to approve first the job description. The van driver position is one that's going to be under the transportation department. And the reason for the need for a van driver is our ESS students that need transportation every single day have for the past, I don't know how many years, always been transported by the instructional aides. So when we hire instructional aides, they are hired to service kids at the school sites. Because of the need to transport kids, we're having to pull the instructional IAs early in the morning and part of the afternoon to complete the transportation duties and take kids home and pick them up and all of that. So every year, it just becomes more complicated for us to manage their hours and manage the transportation versus managing the time that they should be with kids. So last year, we started with a discussion with Mr. Soto, Mrs. Walker, and transportation supervisor for the need to have van drivers for the district. And that would really solve the problem of using some of these IAs who need to be working with kids instead of driving. And that's why we're bringing the van driver position to you for approval.
But don't you have generically employees that drive vans all the time? I mean, without a job description?
Not necessarily. I mean, only when needed. We don't have a job description as a van driver. And you have the cases, for instance, for athletics, maybe one of the coaches drives the van to
But
wherever
they're-
they're
yeah.
going.
Yeah.
But not for transporting kids, especially the ESS kids. Mostly is the ESS IA that has been added, like an hour to drive early in the morning and in the afternoon when the kids need to be dropped.
I just wonder why specifically a van, because teachers drive them on field trips, coaches drive them, anybody that's needed in transportation, if they needed to, they pick it up. Why
Those are current
specific?
employees.
Pardon?
Those are current employees that are driving the vehicles.
Right.
This is somebody new coming in specifically for that purpose.
Under the transportation,
Under the transportation
under the
department.
transportation
Is going to be
department.
specifically a van driver.
Correct.
And they wouldn't need, and we did some research with other districts, and other districts do have this, so for that purpose and maybe other reasons. But in order to have something and have somebody who can be designated, I need to have a position. I can't put him as a bus driver because that's not, they don't have a CDL. I can't just hire more IAs and use them to drive all day.
Okay.
And that's the purpose.
Okay, I just can't understand why, a coach is a van driver, is he going to have to require all of
No,
the?
no.
Okay,
And to pay this, it comes out of M&O, or does it come
Correct.
out of, okay.
Yeah, some of them are going to be M&O and other funds as needed. The goal is to have at least one full-time van driver and a couple part-times, only as needed. And of course, when they're not driving, they're going to be helping at the transportation department.
do I have a motion?
No, sir.
No.
Mr.
I
Lemon?
move to approve the addition of the van driver job
Second.
description.
I second.
By Mrs. Salchow. Okay, good. It's good to have that clarification because people see people driving vans all
Yeah.
over and you think that, okay. Roll call. I'm sorry, any discussion, board members? Roll call.
Ms. Salcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes. Item H, discussion action. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's item H. Discussion action on the approval of out-of-state travel for Mr. Angel Vidal and Mr. Tony Young to attend the Marine Corps Educator Workshop. Ms. Samaniego.
Yes, Mrs. Rodriguez submitted this this week and, forgot that this needed to be approved, and this is out-of-state travel. So the Marine Corps is providing this educator workshop in San Diego, not at 1 penny cost to the district. They are taking care of all transportation, hotel accommodations, and it is for a training which will allow the educators to be very knowledgeable in their expectations, for Marine, and these two individuals, one being the assistant principal that Mrs. Rodriguez recommended, along with Mr. Tony Young, to be kind of the liaisons at site for kids to go to and ask questions if they needed to. And because it's out-of-state travel, I needed to bring it to the board.
Why wouldn't it be a counselor, just a general question?
I don't know. Mrs. Rodriguez submitted those two names to me, and obviously I can't approve them because it's out-of-state travel.
Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the out-of-state travel.
Is there a second? By Ms. Salchow. Any discussion?
So the benefit of this is going to be what then?
For these two individuals to be very familiar with their program and serve as a liaison to the kids there at the site. And recruiters come and go to the sites, and sometimes they're available for questions. So these two individuals, Mr. Vidal and Mr. Tony Young, would be able to provide some information and become part of the educator workshop.
Okay.
Isn't this all kind of like a career opportunity where people decide whether they want to go into the Marine Corps or whatever, and that would be more particular to a counselor? I mean, I'm just asking. The counselors are the ones that advise students on career opportunities and what's available and all those kinds of things. But since it's not costing
Yes,
the district any money, and Dr. Gomez.
No, go ahead, finish
No,
your
you
thought.
finish.
No, I think the reason, and I was going to say, if the Marine Corps wants them to go, they should pay the way, and obviously they are.
They are.
It's because they want
To have
more
some-
people to come in.
Sure. And then, aren't you by policy authorized to approve out-of-state travel?
And I couldn't remember. I was having that discussion with Alma, but I think I am. I think.
You
I'm
are.
not sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
All
by
right.
policy, you're already
Okay.
designated,
We'll
but,
double check, but just in case, I wanted to bring it to you.
okay, you got it. All right, we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, sir.
Roll call.
Ms. Salchow?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes,
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes, item I, discussion action on the approval of retention stipends for certified and classified staff and administrator based on retention guidelines and ESSER II funding. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, and we had informed you that out of ESSER II grants, we were going to we would be able to pay retention stipends for any returning employee from last year who was going to stay for the full year and who met the qualifications or retention guidelines as set forth by HR. We are, in the background information, you have a total number of our returning employees that qualify, certified all administrators and classified employees for a total, including the benefits with that amount provided to you. And we just need that for approval so that our employees could get
Okay,
the
so
stipends.
we'll entertain a motion to approve as recommended by the administration under ESSER II, retention stipends for qualified full-year returning employees based on the retention guidelines set forth by Human Resource Department, and I just want to make sure we say and identified by the administration so that we're approving anybody they identify, okay? Entertain a motion to do that.
I move to approve that.
A second
second.
by Dr. Gomez. Any discussion? Roll call.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, since this is a retention stipend, what if somebody midway through the year wants to resign or,
Yes,
what?
and we had that.
Purchased out that money.
We had that discussion extensively to determine when we would be giving that retention stipend. And there is no guideline or stipulation in ESSER II that states we have to give it at the end of the year, mid-year, or what happens when an employee decides to resign. And unfortunately, Mrs. Selcha, that is a chance we're going to have to take. But we were very careful in making a decision, and our leadership team really felt strongly that our employees needed some type of reward
Yes.
for the struggles of last year, and it would be a very nice reward for them to see it earlier on in the year. So
Okay.
we hope that everybody appreciates and really stays with us. Teachers, I'm confident, it's more classified who can leave at any time.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Salchow?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes,
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes, item J, discussion action on the approval of the 2021-22 Douglas Unified School District Number 27 safety requirements for COVID-19.
Okay.
Ms. Samaniego.
And I'm bringing this to you, board members. Part of ESSER, as Mrs. Geraldina Trevino said, there's some safety requirements that have to be embedded and have to be approved by the board. We have a COVID-19 handbook that is shared with staff and parents, which includes part of this. So if you read the document, it's just encompassing all the DUSD safety requirements for COVID that we're implementing from, health screenings, the standards we're applying, what we would hope for sick individuals to follow, individuals with positive diagnosis, our quarantine and isolation guidelines. It has what to do in case you have symptoms, student protocols, staff protocols, and the only thing within here, Dr. Eden, about mask is because we can't enforce them, right? It does say the only thing in here with mask, it says, schools that do not have a universal mask requirement could require masking by student, teachers, and staff if they are experiencing an onset of upper respiratory infection symptoms at school while waiting to be picked up or leave at school. So we know that in here, that it doesn't say that we have a mask mandate. We have continually said in our communication that we are recommending, highly recommending, that the parents make that decision at home and send the kids with mask. So that's the only thing in here that is not specific to mask.
Entertain a motion to approve for discussion.
I move to approve for
Is there a
discussion.
second?
Second.
By Mr. Ramos. Discussion. Dr. Gomez.
I just have one. Okay, in these recommendations that you're doing, I think if a student is sick or a teacher is exhibiting any kind of symptom, I think that they should be sent home. The student or the teacher.
Yes, and we are following that.
Okay.
Yeah, we are. We're sending kids home and staff home. And so
I
that's
don't hear very well, and I was hoping that that's what you had said.
Yes, no, I did. Yes, we are sending them home, Dr. Ed, believe me. Sometimes they don't want to go home, but it's just a cold. It's a migraine. It's a sinus infection. I sent Alma home last week. Okay, you're going home, Alma, and she's okay. She was.
She might have had a
yes,
migraine.
but I sent her home. I said, no, you're going home. Okay. And we're doing the same thing with students. We are strongly, strongly encouraging our parents that if they are waiting a COVID test result, even though the child may show no symptoms, don't send them back until you have that COVID result. Yes.
Good idea.
So that's in here too.
Any further discussion?
I just wanted to add on that, my grandson came up with symptoms and he was sent home when he got tested. But what I'm getting at is when he came back, teachers right away got a hold of him after school. I had to come for him twice because they were catching him up with the classes he had missed, waiting to see what was going on.
That's good. Okay.
Just wanted to comment that that was a good job done by your staff there.
Okay, thank you.
Any further
I
discussion?
have a
Mr.
couple
Lemon?
of things. One thing, as I understand it, there are walk-in testing at CVS. So if anybody does have those symptoms, then they can just go right in there and get tested for a peace of mind and do that right away. And the turnaround is like a day and a half.
Yes, it's rather quick.
CVS?
Oh,
CVS has also,
Is Embry still here?
Embry is at Douglas High School from 7 to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. And you don't need an appointment. You can walk in, do a walk-in.
But that one takes a little longer, doesn't it?
Yes, that takes about 24
days?
hours a minimum. 24 hours a minimum,
Oh, okay,
48 the
that's good.
maximum. Yes.
Good.
I have another point I wanted to bring up. I think it's prudent at this stage to continue to work on our certification for online education in case
Yes, and we
something
are,
happens, and then we all of a sudden have to.
we're
have to shut
preparing
down
for
again.
that.
So, okay.
I will be bringing that to the table very soon.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Elcha?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes. Item 3, it is there, a request for future agenda items. I think if you want to just, Dr. Gomez.
No, I said the one that we were going to have another meeting
Curtis?
Seems like we're gonna have another emergency
Ya
meeting.
vamos.
Right. Mr. Lindeman.
Yeah, considering the mask mandate and the appropriateness
Okay,
that we
we'll
get
discuss
involved.
that now, because so we're going to specifically discuss the mask mandate, that requested item by a board member. The time should be when the board is available to the general public. So what time would be good for the board members? I might as well
Well,
ask
I
them
would say
now.
5 PM.
Would 5 PM be okay?
Tomorrow?
Yes,
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
that'll give us 24 hours.
Well, but I have something that I have to do, but if it's not over in time, I'm gonna leave, okay?
Is 5 o'clock okay then?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Mr. Ramos?
Yes, I'll be fine, but I'll be doing my
By
phone.
phone, okay.
and then
Okay,
I'll probably have to cut off too.
okay.
Okay. So any other items other than that? Call for executive session. The governing board may vote into executive session to obtain legal advice regarding current and potential payroll issues pursuant to ARS 38-431-03, A subsection 3. The attorney will be present telephonically for this executive session. Entertain a motion to do that.
I move to enter into executive session.
Is there a second?
Second,
By Mr. Ramos. Discussion.
I have to recuse myself from this for a conflict of interest.
Okay, and that'll be a matter of record that Ms. Salchow will not attend the executive session, nor will she vote if a vote is forthcoming on this item. All those in favor, roll call.
Ms. Salcha?
She just stated why she wasn't going to do
I
it.
Yes.
recuse myself.
She's going to recuse herself because
Okay.
of potential.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Ramos?
yes.
Mr. Berry?
Yes, and members of the board, we're going to move into the superintendent's office because we're going to have that, and it's better for the audio with the attorney. And Ms. Salchow, we'll see you when we come out.
I'll be here.
Let's see. You're going to be available too.
Yes, I'll be outside.
So $3,000 later, after talking to that attorney, we're ready.
No, how long was that? $300 an hour or $500 an hour?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Mr. Ramos.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lindeman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
No se quiere ir. Va a haber tiempo de todo, mañana.
Sense here, sense there.